Yes, sir. And welcome to the Curtain Call podcast here on the Man on Second YouTube channel. Yeah, quick show of hands. How many people out there knew Major League Baseball has a draft combine? Because only until like a year or two ago, I could have raised my hand because I wasn't aware that MLB had a draft combine. Obviously, when we talk about draft combines, a lot of people immediately think of the National Football League and the NBA and in more recent years. But the NFL combine has kind of gained a lot of steam. Well, for the last 5 or 6 years, Major League Baseball has had a draft combine, and I happen to be covering the last two of them. So that's why I bring it up. And today's episode, we will be talking about the draft combine, which was at Chase Field in Phoenix, Arizona. And just by chance, because I have family out in Arizona, I was out there a year ago and it was brought to my attention they had the draft combine. So I attended, and this year the same thing. And so that's going to be the topic as we get ready to draft. And for those who don't know, Major League Baseball's draft will be July 13th and 14th in Atlanta. It's folded in as part of the All-Star festivities. You almost could call it an All-Star week, but it'll be that Sunday before the Tuesday game and Monday, the day of the Home Run Derby. That will be the draft. 20 rounds. The last couple of years, 20 rounds instead of 40, and in years past it went up 50 or more. But we're going to kind of zone in on the draft combine, and I'm going to kind of shed some light. There's going to be kind of an overview on that. I have a South Florida, take on this. I'm going to do, I think South Florida was snubbed. We are going to kind of pursue that in a follow-up podcast, but this is going to be kind of an overview of the combine. And I'm going to tell you the pros, the cons, what I like, what I suggest they do. Moving forward as Major League Baseball tries to grow their combine, try to create buzz for their upcoming draft. And, being that the channel focuses a lot on the amateur side, grassroots sides, it's right in our wheelhouse, and we feel we need to cover it. Obviously, the NFL has created something. They kind of figured out how to make a non-event a major event, and that's what baseball is trying to do. A little bit different dynamic because the National Football League, obviously they do theirs in Indianapolis, Indiana. I actually covered one of those back 20, 30 years ago. And it was a lot of fun. I did it before, really. A lot of people really got on board on it. But, the National Football League, the dynamic is college football is kind of obviously their minor league system, if you will. So the fans, so ESPN and NFL Network can kind of dive right in on the combine, and everyone knows the names of these players. Those who follow college football know who the top players are. The draftniks really eat it up. Baseball's trying to chip into that, and there's something to be said about seeing, for the football angle, seeing these guys in T-shirts and shorts. Baseball, the same thing. So what is the combine, for the major league, and why should it be considered important? Why should people want to view it? Like I said, it's a 20 round for the draft. Well, they did the combine at Chase Field June 17th to 21st. Just a quick refresher on what it is. 322 prospects accepted invitations. It's an invitation only thing. From Major League Baseball's website, I used to work at MLB.com for 20 years, so I'm very tight with those people still. MLB Pipeline does a great job. Of their top 200, 174 of Pipeline's top 200 list were invited among the 322 prospects invited. We're talking draft eligible players, high school and college ranks mostly. 41 of the first 50 of Pipeline's list agreed to attend the combine, and like I said, it was in Indianapolis. They did pro style workouts, meaning they did like batting practice on the field there, and it's pretty cool at Chase Field because they have the big scoreboard up there, and they give you the exit velo, the projected distance, and so forth. They work some fielding. This is the stuff that's visual that we can see. MLB Network, Major League Baseball's network, did just day one, and really, it's the first 2 days are really from a fan perspective the exciting part of the combine because that's when the players are on the field. That's when you can kind of compare the players, see how they do. They take BP, you see how their exit velocities match up, and so forth. But the network, MLB Network, did day one, which was on June 17th. They did it from, keep in mind, Arizona's Pacific time right now, so 12 to 6 Eastern time, so 9 to 3 out west. And on day one, on the 17th at 6 p.m. Arizona time, 9 p.m. Eastern time, they did a high school all-star game, so to speak, or the high school people who wanted to participate did a 7-inning high school game. But for the most part, that was not televised. I think MLB.com streamed that. But again, it was a good chance for everybody to kind of see who these players are on the field. 300 players in 30 rounds. When you go with 30 teams, obviously the compensatory rounds, 300 players essentially is 10 rounds. So those are the people that are there. I felt South Florida was snubbed on this. I'm going to do a separate podcast on that. But there were South Florida players there. Antonio Jimenez, who played at Archbishop McCarthy, graduated in 2023. Went to UM for a year, then was at Central Florida in 2025. Shortstop. Did really well for himself. I'll break down Antonio more in a separate podcast as well. I do have a video up of Antonio in an interview I did with him, a nice 5-minute interview I did with him. That's already on the channel. So from Jupiter, from Palm Beach County, there was a player, Gabe Drouleau of Jupiter High. He was invited. He was there, and Gabe is a South Florida commit. And Alan Soler from True North Classical Academy, he was invited. I heard that he went, or I saw on a list that he went, but Alan had Tommy John surgery, so he didn't participate in anything, and I did not see him there. It's a little bit catch as catch can right there because they bring players out in groups, and with 300 of them, there's a lot of downtime and a lot of where players could be in different groups, or they may hit in different types of days, and some of these players choose not to participate for various reasons. So, what do I like? The pros of the combine. For one, you like the fact that baseball is doing something like this, that they're putting all 30 players, 3,300 players on at the same venue. You can see them up close. The day one was exciting for the fact that more of the bigger names, that's what the network got. So you did have a good number of players who will be taken in the first round. Keep in mind the College World Series was going on at the same time. So you didn't see Cade Anderson. It was like the number 2 or 3, depending what prospect list you're looking at. The left-handed pitcher from LSU. He obviously was in the College World Series, so he didn't participate. But for the most part, a lot of the names were there. Again, what we like is the fact that it's one gathering place. These players get to meet with all 30 teams, and from the player standpoint, the meetings are probably the most important thing for them because that's a chance for these teams to sit down with these players, get to know them on a personal level. They may not have had that opportunity to talk during the college or high school seasons, so they get them in the same room. Again, you get to match them up. You get to see them physically next to each other. So we like that part of it. We like that MLB Network is part of it. They're still trying to figure out how to grow it, how to get it more compelling. But overall, they do a fine job with what they have. You see some ground balls to shortstops, third baseman as well, some throws from the outfield. Pitchers kind of had a little tough because let's say they're 30 or 40 pitchers that want to throw. They go one at a time off the mound. Each throws about 10, 15 pitches, whatever the number they designate. And it's obviously everyone's trying with the metrics, trying to hit metrics more than hits location. So you see some pitches going to the backstop, one or two almost hit us as part of media being in the background. We almost get, plunked by a 95-mile-an-hour pitch. But hey, it was 95 miles an hour, and that's what they care about. They'll worry about putting it in the strike zone. They're looking for that type of metric. So again, that was interesting, I thought. Also, I thought it was an interesting one that a lot of people talk about. This was kind of a bloodline uh, uh, combine because you had Quinton Young, who is a relative of former players Dimitri Young and Delman Young. He was there. Quinton's he was like 6'6", big kid. Hits the ball super hard, over 110 miles an hour exit velo. Very interesting guy. I think the Marlins should probably take a good look at him. They probably are. They value the exit velocity a lot. He was over 112. Might have been like 114, 115. But that's for another day. I wouldn't say necessarily the first round, but projects to go in the first couple of rounds, and that's interesting. Karsten Sabathia, the son of Hall of Famer CC Sabathia, he was there. He's an infielder out of Houston. I thought he accounted for himself really well. Looks really polished. Again, another guy who's hitting the ball about 110 miles an hour. So keep an eye on him. Again, so that's the type of stuff. And then just for perspective, a year ago, 2024, 305 players were invited. 224 of those who were at the combine of 2024 were drafted. So going to the combine does have value. So let's turn quickly to the cons. I don't really want to beat it up too much because I think that baseball's trying to figure it out. But a con was no Ethan Holiday, who projects to go number 1 overall to Washington, although people on the, my insider types feel that, not that the Nationals are feeling this way, but that Cade Anderson would be a better and safer pick for them, especially since in recent years some hitters haven't panned out so much in the draft for Washington, and they definitely could use pitching, and Cade Anderson could almost step in, LSU, little Paul Skeens like, although Cade's obviously left-hander, could pretty much step right in a year or two and be in the rotation and pitch at a very high level. But that's something to keep an eye on, but neither one were there. Several of the top guys were not there, and that's always a bummer. And just kind of the invitation process to me as a con, I'll kind of dive more into it when I talk about South Florida snubs in the next upcoming podcast. But there's an invitation process, and some of these teams are protective, and they're highly competitive because they're trying to get some of these guys. It's and not. Because you have to kind of, part of the process, it's not as simple as this, but let's say there's a player here in South Florida who's deserving of an invitation, but a team or two wants to hide that player and feels if that player goes to the combine, they can excel, so they don't recommend them. Which kind of hurts the player, obviously. But again, we've dived more into that. So the invitation process is still kind of in the works. I think they try to balance it out, get people from across the country, so that doesn't necessarily take the best, 300. But still, everyone there, I'm not going to slight anybody that was there and said they are not deserving. But again, it's a process. It's growing it, and obviously, in recent years, the trend is there's an emphasis more and more on the college player over the high school player. Because with fewer minor league teams, they're down to 140 compared to over 160 in recent years as they get rid of a level. And there's talk of getting rid of potentially another level of minor leagues, which, they're wanting these players, and owners want investment immediately on their player, the return. So if they pay a couple of $1 million, they don't want that necessarily to go to a 17-year-old who may never pan out. They'd rather pay that couple of $1 million to someone they feel in 2 years could be in the big leagues. So, keep that in mind. And, so there's more of an emphasis on the college player. What stood out, though, overall to me is the physicality. There's obviously baseball is becoming a very physical sport. Exit velo, pitch velocity, these things matter. How hard you throw the ball across the diamond matters, and so we're seeing more and more of the strength over skill per se. Even though these guys are highly skilled, but the strength component, I was there a year ago and saw good exit velocities, but it seemed like the exit velocities were many over 110 miles an hour. And you can see the size, the difference between college and the high school kids. Not all the high school kids are hitting the ball that as hard, but to be expected when you're 17, 18 years old up against 20, 21-year-olds. So that's, one of the things that stood out. Another thing that stood out, it was brought to my attention, at least one player, an outfielder, did the batting practice, but didn't do the hitting, didn't do the fielding out of concerns for their, they didn't feel their arm strength. They thought that might hurt them negatively if they, were at the combine and they're throwing. They thought that could hurt them, although, an argument could be made that these teams have pretty much thoroughly scouted you beforehand. They'll have a pretty good indication of how your arm is. And you might as well show everything you got. And if you don't have necessarily arm strength, maybe you have quickness, maybe you react to the ball better, you get a quicker release, and you could and you're accurate with your throws, so you could get the ball to the bases quicker, and it wouldn't be such a death. You can't really hide if you have a weak arm, when that happens. But those are just some of the observations I have on this one. An interesting guy. I will bring this player up from South Florida because I find this interesting. Like Alan Soler from True North Classical Academy. I saw Alan early in the year before he got injured and was projecting. He beat Stoneman Douglas, handed Douglas one of its two losses, pitches at a very high level. You could see scouts were all over him, was projecting as a first or second round pick. And next thing you know, he gets arm injury and ultimately gets Tommy John surgery. And I found it interesting that Alan, if he did attend, you attend for the meetings. Alan's a UCF commit, so that raises a very interesting question. If you're a player, you're obviously not going to get the money you would have gotten if you were healthy, but if you want to just get get into pro ball, from a team standpoint, you have a chance to get a first, second round talent, a high end potential left-handed pitcher. Do you take that pitcher knowing he's not going to be available his first year of pro ball because he's rehabbing and recovering from Tommy John? Find it interesting. I like to get a little more details on that. I'll update you in the future about Allen's situation, but other pitchers as well, or players who are dealing with injury. Sometimes a player is advised by their agency, by their representative, to not participate in certain drills because of fear of injury, or they were nursing something. So that's another reason why you don't work out. So those are just a couple of observations from the combine. Just overall, again, I thought they did a good job. How do you make it more fan attractive from a team standpoint, from a league standpoint? Obviously, it's good, the evaluation process. Now, keep in mind, most of these teams have thorough evaluations on many of these players since high school, and sometimes even maybe 13, 14-year-olds if they had seen them in the perfect game in a showcase event. So the evaluation process has kind of been ongoing. They know what you kind of can do on the field, so they use this to see how you handle yourself. Are you professional? How you go about your business, your demeanor. So because when you're making millions and hundreds of thousands of dollar investments, these teams want to make sure they're putting their money on the right people. So that's really good. So how do you grow it, from a fan standpoint, media, since many media don't know, from media standpoint, it's great to cover. It goes outside of day one when the MLB Network kind of gets priority with players and getting people around. You're very close up. Day two, there's no MLB Network around. You're very close up to where they're hitting, so you could video them, which I did. Only problem is I wish that netting wasn't so thick. It would have been better videos. You can only get so close. But I was able to get there. So from a media standpoint, you can really, get close up, and you could interview these players right there on the field once they get, a minute of time. Everything's pretty relaxed. So from a fan standpoint, it's really not open. But when you're in a big league park like Chase Field, you can do things. Obviously, you don't want to make it a circus and distract from its mission. But there are certain sections you could, very minimal, if no cost at all. You could open up the stadium and put people in certain sections to just sit and watch, because these are the players of tomorrow. So that's just a suggestion. If you want to do it one day, to do that, to create a little more atmosphere. But again, it's a way to kind of promote it. Obviously, you get more people like like the streaming that we do here and the channel we have here at Man on Second and the Curtain Call podcast to shed some light on it. There was media there, but not overwhelming. So from a media standpoint, it's fun to cover. From the fan standpoint, you just kind of wish that fans could see this, because I think fans do get intrigued by something as simple as seeing players in T-shirts and shorts playing, taking BP, or just how they go about their business, throwing the ball, or it's not really going to be an autograph event because they really have to stay locked in. They're basically job interviewing, so that aspect. But you can bring some ex-players and make them, and they are there. They can make them available to sign autographs, or fans at certain sections and certain times could create some appeal. But again, you're trying to grow the sport by introducing the stars of tomorrow, the players of tomorrow. So overall, again, I think, again, really good event, but I also think, you got to be careful with drafts, because you always hear, oh, well, this year's draft's down, but next year's draft's going to be really good. And I saw that and heard that in 2024, that the 2024 draft was going to be a little weak, but 2025, watch out, that's going to be outstanding. And then you're hearing more and more once you get that the draft's not as great as you think it is. So the Marlins, I know they picked seventh, but that seventh pick may not be too much worse than the top two or three, because there's doubts on all these guys. So from the Marlins standpoint, I still feel they could get a really, really solid player. Now, is that going to be a transform your organization player? Who knows? But they still, you could see the level of player that's hitting the ball over 110 miles an hour, and how the game is gearing towards those type of numbers. All teams could load up on them, and certainly have enough to give themselves a fighting chance at the big league level. But again, we're going to break down a few more. I wanted to do a podcast on the on the combine. I think overall a great experience. Those people that should follow these draft next, they'll pay attention to some of the names as these lists start getting updated. I'm not going to do lists. There's others that do that, but I will note players that I feel could be moving up and down the ladder, and I'm not going to be zoned in on 1 through 200. Like let the people who do that worry about that. But again, I think I got a few highlights here that we could throw up here, to see some players in action here, some hitting. And then fielding, this is Nick Partridge from Mulberry High, really good player, Florida commit. We saw Nick play in the state championship game. They played against American Heritage Plantation. Won the Patriots. Heritage won that game. But again, we get to see Nick Partridge in action right here one more time. He's infielder. He pitches, comes in on the ball nicely. He's going to be a nice player, whether he's drafted or not. So again, a couple of highlights from there, and as we kind of wrap this up, again, we'll have much more content. A lot of videos already up on the channel from the combine. We'll dive deeper into it, and we'll kind of go a little heavier and talk about the draft and what it means to our players in Florida, more specifically South Florida. But with that, that will wrap up this edition. Please like, subscribe, follow all the content here on the Man on Second channel and the Curtain Call podcast. With that, this is Joe Frisaro, and we will catch everybody in the next